Hello and welcome. I hope you're doing well. I've just finished my last mouthful of my dinner, so please excuse me. I was trying to get it all down before I had to come on. I hope you're all doing well. We are back looking at this really long Third Amendment cross complaint. The cross complaint. I'm here, but drive me for about 20 minutes to be listening. Okay, that's in short order. I actually looked ahead and saw what the judge has ruled on. Your excuse, I'm cooking mine. Well, I didn't cook mine without a lawyer. I actually ordered mine in. But anyway, what is very interesting because the Shin and that they did what's called a demur, which is making a pleading that challenges the sufficiency or adequacy of pleadings of another party. So they made this demur plea to say there's no substance to it, and the judge has ruled whether it was overruled or whether it was sustained. And it's very interesting because Heidi Douglas's claim, for example, is actually sustained, which means held, and it means that it's essentially been dismissed with no chance to replead. Where Aubrey Fisher, when we get to the judgment, he has been given 30 days to amend his. So the judge is saying there could be something to this. I'll give you another chance to do it. And if you don't meet that threshold, I will throw it out. So there are some of these claims that some people have not got because we said they were ridiculous. And as I said at the time, Kylie Douglas's claims or allegations do not meet the standard for what she's alleging. We went through those standards. I wanted to talk about, I found another clip exposing 7M because I knew that Katie Joy had shared it. It came from exposing 7M, and 7M's given this great big spiel. I'm not in the car yet. It says there's two on, and it's the two Aussies that are on. So I'm also pretty excited on our podcast. We've got Steve Monaghetti he's going to do a podcast with us, and a brand new young girl. I actually knew her parents. They taught me in Sunday school, and their daughter is going to her first Olympic Games, and so it's going to be very going to be very, very interesting. Yeah, and we've got by the time we're all done, I think we've got 25. We will have interviewed 25 athletes, which is pretty cool. So yeah, Aussie, oi, oi, oi. So I wanted to show this first, so before we get into the heavy court stuff, because for me the court stuff is crazy. And as we see when we get to the ruling from the judge, now they did actually have to decide whether they were going to accept the ruling, on whether they accept the ruling by the judge, or whether they're going to argue it. And I think on some points they are arguing it. So this is the alleged story behind the waterboarding audio. We've all heard the audio. Well,
there's a portal, there's a pillar right there. Oh my goodness. Hallelujah. Amen. I remember Dom standing kneeling there and getting waterboarded. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord for people servants of the Lord who obey the prophetic leading and decide to just pour water all over somebody. Amen.
Okay, so here is the story. Oops, that's not what I wanted. The alleged, Stop Colding's got it too. Many of you have heard the waterboarding audio by now. or at least have heard about it. Today we're going to share with you the alleged story behind this event. This recounting of the waterboarding was shared by someone who was there. So again, it is alleged. Allegedly, in the middle of worship sessions, Shekinah worship leaders will sometimes be led by God to come down from the podium to pray for people and cast demons out of people. During one of those times, Chloe came down from the podium and went over to a member of Shekinah named Dom. To my knowledge, Dom is still a member of Shekinah to this day. So it's actually Chloe then they should be alleging waterboarding to, not Robert, by the way. Just let's make that technical. Okay. All right. So Dom apparently is still a member. After Chloe came over to Dom, she started pouring a bottle of water over his face while he was kneeling on the floor, as if he was demon possessed, according to the former member. Afterwards, Robert allegedly said one of the worship leaders, either Daniel, Chloe, or Shirley, reported that they had allegedly saw a vision of Dom in hell being tortured by demons, like the way terrorists torture people in a POW scenario. The former member said, who knows if Robert's claim of this vision is actually true, or if the worship leaders truly believe this. I wonder how Dom felt during all of this. In my opinion, this sounds terrifying for your own worship leaders to call you demon-possessed. Faith healing and rituals like this can be dangerous. Many of these instances have been recorded in history and have been debunked. Even some of Robert's favourite preachers who use faith healings have been outed as fraud and admitted their wrongdoings. This is something I think Shekinah members who may be reading this should consider as a red flag. Please take a moment to think about the logistics of what's being said and listen to your gut instinct. Let us know your thoughts if you want to hear more of the worship audios. And Katie says, this is how he keeps them terrified, through fear. It's all manipulation and coercion techniques. This is why Lydia Chung's lawsuit should never have been thrown out. Undue influence can be done this way. And then Alicia Lee says, I was there. She says, I'm so sorry you went through this horror. No one deserves this. But Alicia didn't have it happen to her, though. Stock Colding says, you're so strong, so you had to witness something like this. Can't even believe it was okay. And then that. And someone says, I've seen people in recent weeks talking about the waterboarding allegations as though they were fabricated. I hope whoever that was sees this. And she says, Exposing 7M says, me too. So my question, what do you make of it? I'm happy to play it again because I don't know. Being waterboarded and laughed about, it is completely absurd and disgusting. That is a form of torture. It makes me feel sick. I feel bad for Dom. Robert is no saint. He should be getting waterboarded, really, someone says. And that was Stop Colting that said that. So what are your thoughts on that? Let me play it again.
Praise the Lord for people servants of the Lord who obey the prophetic leading and decide to just pour water all over somebody. Amen. I remember right there's a portal, there's a pillar right there. Oh my goodness. Hallelujah. Amen. I remember Dom standing right, kneeling there and getting waterboarded. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord for people servants of the Lord who obey the prophetic leading and decide to just pour water all over somebody. Amen.
So, again, don't forget that Robert Shin has been accused of or it has been alleged that Robert Shin and 7M were doing this. Where here, according to the story, it wasn't. So what are your thoughts on that? Do we have thoughts on that? Could we hear it? it's just a boring day. She's maybe a definition of waterboarding may be useful. Are we going to say the ice challenge from a few years ago saw hundreds of thousands of people taking part? We're all water. Well, that's a very good point without a lawyer. And don't forget, there's still the ice or the ice bucket. There's still stuff like that that's happening to raise money for places. Right. Well, where do we get the definition from? Oh, I still. Usually, it's still from my understanding. And let's go to the according to NPR, which is, I don't know, what does NPR stand for? Well, even if we take the dictionary definition, I'll go to well, let's go to the Cambridge Dictionary. Waterboarding, a form of torture, extreme physical, mental pain used to make someone give information in which a person is held facing upwards while water is poured in large quantities over the face. This gives the person that they're drowning, unable to breathe and dying. They extracted confessions using simulated drowning known as waterboarding. Fewer examples. Waterboarding was prohibited under the new law. Yeah. All right. From my understanding, is a torture technique in which water is, according to Britannica, it's where water is poured into the nose and mouth of a victim who lies on their back on an inclined platform. Even Wikipedia is saying a form of torture in which water is poured over a cloth covering the face. Merriam-Webster talks about an interrogation technique. Civil liberties, where an interrogator straps a prisoner to a board. Amnesty International is a slow motion suffocation. Unless you've been so many people don't. Many public figures often use waterboarding as a form of enhanced interrogation. As Malcolm Nance, combat veteran and former chief of training at the US Navy, unless you've been strapped down to the board, enjoy the agonizing feeling of water overpowering your gag reflex and fill your throat open, and allow pint after pint of water to involuntarily fill your lungs, you will not know the meaning of the word. He told Congress that it's a slow motion suffocation with enough time to contemplate the inevitability of blackout and expiration. So here is there's a thing about waterboarding, but from what I can work, so hey bro, hey dude, I keep saying to him that I'm not a bro. So according to this naval guy, if we use the Amnesty International definition, that's not what it was. So there's a picture there, and even that's there. Then they usually become unconscious, apparently. So he placed some cloth on my face. So as far as I know, there was no cloth placed on his face. But I think, okay, let's have a look. It's a form of torture, performed with a cloth. So this one is using water and a cloth. So it's so I cannot find a definition that means pouring water over somebody's face. And it doesn't say how much water it was, it just says we poured water. But the fact the guy didn't go into suffocate, there's a young lady on TikTok who talks about as part of it, she never describes it as someone. Well, the woman in that one I just had was talking about being held down in the shower with a cloth over her. So he wasn't held down. Is it really waterboarding? And I guess that's up to the court to decide. As I said, there would be certain levels of proof and burden of proof that they would have to prove. Whether they can meet that standard is a whole different kettle of fish. Right, so let's go back to this. This is the 9th cause of action. So this is aiding and abetting breach of aiding and abetting breach of voluntary assumed fiduciary duty by Alicia Lee against Abraham, Christina, Hannah, Shirley, Jenny, Imaginating, and Robert. Miss Lee realigns incorporates cross-defendants Shirley and Hannah individually act and as agents of Shekinah, voluntarily assumed fiduciary relationships with Miss Lee, owed Miss Lee a duty of care. Did we do this one last night? We might have. They're very repetitive, right? Then it says, Hannah intended and substantially assisted Shirley in outright stealing or embezzling money from Miss Lee's bank account and or credit cards when Shirley was the mentor with primary control over Miss Lee's finances. Once Hannah became the mentor with primary control over Miss Lee's finances, Shirley similarly intended and substantially assisted Hannah in the outright stealing or embezzling money from Miss Lee's bank accounts and or credit cards. Cross-defendant Jenny knowingly and substantially assisted and encouraged Shirley and Hannah individually as agents of Shekinah in outright stealing or embezzling money from Miss Lee by applying for unemployment benefits on Miss Lee's behalf, not providing Miss Lee with her EDD debit card and keeping her for herself, or provided the same to Hannah and or Shirley instead. On information and belief, cross-defendant Christina knowingly and substantially assisted or encouraged Shirley and Hannah individually or as agents of Shekinah in outright stealing or embezzling money from Miss Lee by telling Hannah and Shirley to take money from Miss Lee's accounts when they would ask whose money they should support for the cross donation. Cross defendants. Cross-defendant Robert knowingly and substantially assisted Shirley and Hannah individually as agents of Shekinah in outright stealing or embezzling money from Miss Lee by repeatedly telling Miss Lee that she had to submit all her finances to your assigned mentor and that all she needed to do was obey instructions, focus on God, and meditate on the scripture. Robert further knowingly and substantially assisted by causing Miss Lee to believe that disobeying the man of God would result in Miss Lee's suffering harm, including her family going to hell, inviting Satan into her family's life, becoming demon-possessed, experiencing anxiety and or depression, potentially losing her job, being physically assaulted by other Shekinah members, and or being emotionally abused and berated by Shekinah members in front of others. Cross-defending Imaginating knowingly and substantially assisted and encouraged Shirley individually as both an agent of both Shekinah and Imaginating in outright stealing or embezzling money from Miss Lee because Shirley is an agent of Imaginating and stole or embezzled money on its behalf. I mean, I guess how do you prove it at a criminal level? Because obviously this is a civil, it's the smaller burden of proof. But I'm wondering whether it couldn't have been proven at a criminal level. Why she didn't go press charges. Cross-defendant's conduct was a substantial factor in causing Miss Lee's harm. Miss Lee was harmed in an amount to be determined at trial. cross-defendant's conduct arose out of and was done at least in part to further the trafficking scheme Miss Lee was subjected to. Cross-defendant's actions were done with malice, fraud, oppression, making them liable for punitive damages. What are your thoughts on that? I think stealing and embezzling are very strong words. Stealing and embezzling. I mean, they want to make, I guess at the end of the day, and what you'll see what the judge will do, the judge will look at, be interesting to know if they had bank statements and highlighted the transactions are accusing them of being fraud, not just saying I have no cash. Well, yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. And so this is, when we get to the judge's initial decision, he actually has to look at, like, in aiding and abetting, and he has to look at what the definition in law is aiding and abetting. And do these allegations meet that standard of aiding and abetting? Remember, we said that Kylie Douglas has gone for sexual battery. Now, sexual battery is divine. Just, one of the things you've got to have is you have to have part of the body touch a private part of the body, and they even define what the private part is. Well, it's defined as a private part. And as we saw last night in the video, the back cracking, it could have been innocent that she took to be something more nefarious. But does a hip thrust meet that burden of a private part? So that's what the judge has to decide, whether it can be met at face value. Remember, everything that the cross complainants are written are true, and everything the cross defendants write are true from their opinion. So, but he has to look at it and go, is this going to even meet the burden? Is this going to meet the standard or the definition so that we can proceed? Because once he says we can proceed with this, then you have to get all the evidence. So now we've got intentional infliction of emotional distress by Alicia Lee against Robert Hannah Young and Shekinah. So it always starts off with the first. And as the judge will point out, some of the ways that they have written it have been to their detriment. Or if they had chosen another part of the code, they could have had more success. But what he does is he'll say sustained without the ability to replead, which means once the way that this is done, it means it's dismissed. And let me just show you. I'll just show you what I mean. So let me go down to, and there's a whole lot of legal stuff here too. So I'll just show you what I mean by this, and then, but we will definitely look at this in more detail when we get to that part. But I just want you to see what we're going to be looking at, because it gets very interesting. Okay. So here we've got, so a demur, as I said, is an objection to the fourth cause of action, aiding and abetting. Okay, so it says cross-defendants argue there's no allegations, whatever, and then the code. Defendants argue that to sufficiently plead human trafficking, she must show threatened deportation, threats to withhold visas, etc., etc., etc. This cause of action purports to allege violations of civil code there, and then he goes to the penal code, and he breaks it all down. This is what coercion means. This is what deprivation means. Duress, forced labour, all of this. As to the underlying claim of human trafficking, the third course of action for human trafficking is based on the following. This is what they've alleged. And he says the third cause of action sufficiently pleads to the elements of human trafficking under the definition set out, etc., etc., etc. Cross defendants argue, etc. And the fourth, so it goes on. on, and he goes on, and that's very long. He goes, there's a lot here. As such, the objection to the fourth course of action is overruled as to the cross defendants Young and Abraham. So, which means Young and Abraham are still subject to the aiding and abetting of human trafficking, okay? But sustained without leave to amend as to Jenny and Christina. Jenny and Christina, those allegations towards them are actually dismissed without the cross defendants do not offer argument to support this demur. As such, the demur to the ninth course of action is overruled. Okay. So that was aiding and abetting. So yeah, some they've got some wins and some losses. Is sustained without leave to amend. This is Kylie Douglas's. Emotional distress by Miss Douglas against Hannah and Shekinah fails to state sufficient to court to constitute a course of action. Okay, so she loses the 12th cause of action, which means it's been dismissed. So then we get to whether it's implied. So the demur to the 24th course of action, he believes it's sufficiently pled. And that's really what we're going to go and have a look at to see what the judge believes. So the demur to the 28th course of action is overruled. Okay. That's a win for to the 34th cause of action is sustained without leave to amend. So that was, let's have a look at that one. Violation of Labour Code against 7M is barred by statute of limitations and the court lacks jurisdiction. Okay. And that's what they said, and it's sustained without leave to amend. So they haven't got everything. See, to the 44th is sustained without leave to amend. That is unjust enrichment by Alicia against Imaginating and Robert. So Robert, that has been chucked out. David against Shekinah. So that's been thrown out. Unjust enrichment. Kevin against Shekinah. Been thrown out. Marilyn against 7M. Thrown out. Unjust enrichment. So, no, apparently not. But we'll get into, he actually gives a very long and detailed reason, shows a whole lot of reasoning for that. So when we get into it, but I'm just sort of showing you that, you know, there is a lot that's going to be thrown out, but there is a lot that remains. So, all right. Cross defendant Robert Hannah, knowing that Miss Lee engaged extreme in outrageous conduct intended to cause Miss Lee emotional distress, or at the very least, with reckless disregard, that Miss Lee would suffer emotional distress, knowing that Miss Lee was present when the conduct occurred. Cross-defendant Robert individually and an agent of Shekinah specifically instructed Miss Lee and otherwise caused Miss Lee to believe that not obeying the man of God, Robert would result in Miss Lee suffering serious harm, including her and her family going to hell. Yeah, we had that. Okay. Cross-defendant Robert individually and as the man of God of Shekinah regularly coerced Miss Lee to having sex with him, and so intended to cause Miss Lee emotional distress, or at the very least, reckless disregard that Miss Lee would suffer emotional distress. Cross-defendant Young was aware of Robert's regular planned sexual exploitations. of Miss Lee, and so intended to cause Miss Lee emotional distress, or at the very least acted with reckless disregard. I would have thought a proof of emotional distress would be a breakdown of a marriage. Wouldn't that be a proof of emotional distress? But there's nothing here other than a line to say that she got married when she left Shekinah the first time. What's happened to the husband? Hello, Bo. How are we? So, okay. Cross defendant Hannah individually as an agent hit, punched, kicked, and verbally berated Miss Lee, claiming you don't deserve God, you have no rights to be loved, and nobody likes you. Hannah also destroyed Miss Lee's personal belongings in front of her and intended to cause Miss Lee emotional distress, or at the very least acted with reckless disregard that Miss Lee would suffer emotional distress. Yeah, I mean, we've only scratched the surface, Peter, as to what's thrown out. I mean, it is something like a 20 to, I mean, this is like 100 and something pages. And I think the other document is, how many pages is that? That's a lot as well. Yeah. So, and there is such, where he has sustained something, but he said, I'll give them another chance to plead. So, it's definitely very interesting. We'll have to. Oh no, we're not going into deep. We're not up to that part yet. We're still looking at it as a whole. I was just giving a bit of an overview as to how it was all laid out and what we know was thrown out. Just very briefly, I know the 12th cause of action was thrown out, and it says intention. It's funny, it says intentionally admitted, but the judge has thrown it out anyway. Okay. Hang on. When was this? What was the date of this document? On page 50, aren't we? What was the date of that? The 8th of the 5th. Okay. What's the date of this one? Oh, interesting. So, interesting. All right. So, yeah, we'll just keep looking at these at the moment. All right. So, then we've got reckless disregard to truth. Miss Lee did suffer severe emotional distress, and Robert, Hannah, and Young's conduct was a substantial factor in causing Miss Lee. I've just posted your live text. Thank you, Peter. I couldn't be bothered to do it. I was still eating, as I said, as I was beginning live. Miss Lee is owed damages in an amount to be determined by trial. Cross-defendant's conduct arose out of and was done at least in part to further the trafficking scheme Miss Lee was subjected to. It's a very interesting, again, we've used really big words to try and point home, but what you're going to see what the definitions of trafficking is and everything as far as the court's concerned. And as I said, I'd be very interested to see what the court's definition of waterboarding is, because again, they what they say it was is not what happened. I'm not saying it's nice to have water thrown over your face, but it's supposed to be torture and a form of interrogation. But if you're in church, I don't know how you're interrogated, but anyway. All right, and then they're saying, it was done with malice. So the 11th cause of action, Marilyn realigns and incorporates by reference the allegations contained in the power of cross-defendant Shirley individually. So we've got the same allegations here. In particular, Shirley specifically instructed Marilyn and David to block their family and friends outside of Shekinah and forbid Marilyn and David from visiting family in Orange. What I want to know is whether or not the brother was also stopped from visiting family. What happened to the families there? That's what I want to know. Like, they told us that we know that there was a family member that was also in Shekinah. But what's happened there? All right. Cross-defendant Shirley engaged in further extreme and outrageous conduct, including imposing unrealistic and unreasonable limitations on how Marilyn was allowed to spend her own money on and for her own family. Well, if she was in debt and she was being monitored for, I don't know, requiring Marilyn to report her full schedule to Shirley, including when Marilyn went to the bathroom and what she ate, instructing Marilyn to go on birth control and shaming Marilyn for getting pregnant, and yelling and berating Marilyn in private and in front of other Shekinah members. Cross-defendant engaged in this extreme and outrageous conduct intentionally to cause Marilyn emotional distress, or at the very least, with reckless disregard. Knowing that Marilyn was present when the conduct occurred. That's weird. Marilyn suffered severe emotional distress, and Shirley's conduct was a substantial factor in causing Marilyn's extreme emotional distress. Marilyn is owed money to be determined at trial, and cross-defendants' actions were done with malice. Of course they were. Okay. So then we've got the 12th course of action. All right. Definitely intentionally admitted. We've got gender violence. Alicia. Alicia against Robert and Young. Miss Lee re-alleges and incorporates the reference of the allegations contained in this. Okay. Miss Lee was an employee of Robert and RCP and provided services pursuant to an employment contract with RCP. So we would need to see, it says that there's an employment contract. So that would be interesting to see what the employment contract says. Okay. Cross-defendant cross-defendant Robert subjected Miss Lee to severe and persuasive sexually harassing conduct. Gee whiz. All right. while he was supervisor and an agent of the employer. RCP. On information and belief, Miss Lee was subjected to Robert's sexual harassing conduct because she was a woman. Though all the members were harassed, female members were least respected and seen and treated like servants. That's the first time we've heard that. Would you agree? Okay. They were treated as servants there for sex, to cook, clean, obey, submit to the men. Shekinah and Robert often taught that women must submit to men or go to hell. They also taught that women needed to give sex willingly if their husbands requested sex, because God hated people that do not commit to things with a willing heart. Well, there you go. Cross-defendant Young was aware of Robert's regular planned sexual exploitation of Miss Lee. Miss Lee considered her work environment to be hostile and oppressive, but felt unable to leave. As a reasonable person in Miss Lee's situation would have. Miss Lee was harmed, offended, and severely emotionally distressed by Robert's conduct, facilitated by the conduct of Young, and cross-defendants' conduct was a substantial factor in causing Miss Lee's harm, offence, and severe emotional distress. Miss Lee is owed damages in the amount to be determined by trial. Cross-defendants' conduct arose out and was done, at least in part, to further the trafficking scheme Miss Lee was subjected to. Cross-defendants' actions were done with malice, fraud, oppression, and making them liable for punitive damages. Now, one of the defences, of course, that Robert Shinn will be able to would be able to point out, what his lawyers would probably most likely point out, is that she left, and she came back again. And she came back knowing what was going to happen to her. Now, that could be looked down upon, I guess. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that when you're a defense attorney, well, when you're trying to defend something, you need to find every little way that you can do it, and again and again. Yes, so she left 3 times, came back twice. So you then come back to, why did she come back? Knowing that she was going to be subjected to all of this abuse. Now, people will probably say I'm victim shaming, but my point is that you have to look for any angle when you are when you're trying to defend somebody, rightly or wrongly. Okay, rightly or wrongly, you need to find some type of way to help your client. But yes, she went back again and again, because at some point in time she would have had to have thought, I know what this is, I know what's about to happen here. So okay. And And my other argument about it being a trafficking scheme is, can it be a trafficking scheme if she was able to leave and come back? That's my other issue. Seeing who the judge is here. Is there a judge listed here? A jury trial demanded. So if you can leave, are you really, and you come back willing, and you come back, are you really being trafficked? And these are all the things that the defendants' lawyers will be looking at. You know, she escaped once, but she came back. So the 14th cause of action, aiding and abetting gender violence. By Alicia against Young. Okay, Alicia against Young. Yep. Okay. So Miss Lee realleges and incorporates by reference the allegations contained in the preceding paragraphs. That the co-defendant Robert, individual as an agent and owner of RCP, committed gender violence against Miss Lee in violation of California Code 52.4. Cross-defendant Young had actual knowledge of the gender violence in the form of sexual exploitation committed by Robert individually and as an agent of RCP, and intended for the gender violence to occur. What it looks like here, and this is just my opinion, is that they put all these allegations out there, knowing that probably 3 or 4 of them are going to get thrown out, but one of them will stick. Because you can't say human trafficking. Can you say human trafficking and gender violence? Are they the same thing? Or do you go for human trafficking, also chucking gender violence and knowing that you might be lucky and get one of them? Very interesting, but definitely they're throwing stuff at a wall so that something will stick. Cross-defendant Robert. So he aided and abetted. He had actual knowledge of gender violence, they say. Hello, Vedandra. Well, thank you. You'll be very happy. There's going to be another one later on too, by the way. Another one coming up. No, they don't seem to be, do they? Isn't that interesting, though? Isn't that very interesting? You've picked that up as well. Okay, so on information belief, cross-defendant and Young substantially assisted or encouraged gender violence committed by Robert by ensuring that nobody was there. At the property, and when Robert wanted to have sex with Miss Lee, Robert followed a pattern of his visits. He would always arrive between 2 and 2:40. Why haven't we heard anybody else that anyone else that has been that he did this to? It only seems to be her, by the way. Did you notice that? Did you notice that? It's only her. Okay. Send a text message to Shirley, the house captain, and Shirley would text Young because Robert was coming and needed to spend time with God. Robert would then enter the house, make his way to Alicia's room, coerce sexual services, and then go to the living room. At that point, Shirley and Young would send a text message to everyone to come to the house and eat. I thought he laid on the bed. I thought earlier it said he would lay on the bed. Okay. So cross-defendant's conduct was a substantial factor in causing her harm. She was harmed to an amount that's needed for trial. And it was done with fraud, with all of that other stuff as well, what they say there too. So, okay. 15th course of action. Okay, Miss Lee alleges. I'm just seeing what I've got here. I'll see what I can find here. Yeah, so this is the last document. There is a hearing on the 12th of the 7th. Hearing on motion to compel compliance with request for production of documents, request for order awarding monetary sanctions against the plaintiffs and cross defendants and their counsels. So that's happening on the 12th. So there is another date coming. So there's another date coming up, by the way. But this is the last. This is the third one that was available. All right. If workplace sexual harassment, well, I think it would be, well, the 15th course of action, Peter, is work environment harassment. And I would think that it is possible that that is the case. So, but yes, you are right. All right. So Miss Lee, she's an employee of Robert and RCP. She was subjected to harassing conduct by cross-defendant Robert. This, as you said, Peter, I think this would be a better way to go. But again, we're just chucking stuff at the wall at the moment, in the hope that that it sticks. All right. So she was subject to harassing conduct by cross-defendant Robert, who made sexual solicitations and demands for sexual compliance to Miss Lee while he was supervisor and an agent of the employer, RCP. Correct. It's I think this would be I think this is the strongest way to go. Oh, there was a hearing on the 7th of there was a hearing on the 7th of the 7th as well. Oh no, 2025. No, that's right. That's next year. There's a trial. Yeah. So they're doing it. There's a motion to compel hearing on the 12th of July. And I think yeah. So this is the final document that's been done. So the judge, yeah. So cross defendants Robert's conduct was unwelcome, persuasive, and severe. A reasonable woman in Miss Lee's circumstances would have considered the work environment to be hostile, intimidating, offensive, oppressive, or abusive. Miss Lee considered her work environment to be hostile, intimidating, offensive, oppressive, or abusive, but felt unable to leave. Cross-defendant Young was aware of Robert's regular planned sexual harassment and exploitation of Miss Lee and conspired with Robert to intentionally facilitate Robert's continual sexual harassment and exploitation of Miss Lee. Miss Lee was harmed, offended, and severely emotionally distressed by Robert's conduct, facilitated as it was by the conduct of Young, and cross-defendant's conduct was a substantial factor in causing Miss Lee's harm, offence, and severe emotional distress. Miss Lee is owed damages in the amount to be determined at trial. Cross-defendant's conduct arose out of and was done, at least in part, to further the trafficking schemes Miss Lee was subjected to. This is the bit that I sort of have issues with. I was okay. I was in agreement until we got up to trafficking schemes, because I don't know that workplace harassment comes under trafficking. Cross-defendants' actions were done with malice, fraud, oppression, making them liable for punitive action. On August 28, 2023, Miss Lee filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department and has obtained a right to sue letter regarding her work environment claim. Attached is a true copy of that letter. So they said she had a claim. So she could have just stuck with the work harassment claim and probably would, but she's also now thrown all this other stuff around, and I don't know how how successful it's going to be. But yes, the workplace harassment one is in my opinion, is the strongest one yet. 16th course of action, aiding and abetting. Hostile work environment. Alicia Lee against Young. Miss Lee realleges etc., etc. Cross-defendant on information from police, cross-defendant Young substantially assisted or encouraged the sexual harassment committed by Robert by ensuring that no other Shekinah members were at the property when Robert wanted to have sex with Miss Lee. Okay. Cross-defendant's conduct was a substantial factor in causing Miss Lee harm. Miss Lee was harmed in the amount to be determined by trial. So this again comes down to a very interesting thing, because if you know that someone's been harassed at work and you turn a blind eye, are you as guilty as the person committing that crime? You as guilty as the person that's doing it. So that's where that's really what they're saying, is that because this guy knew and made things available, or if you knew the boss was having an affair and you told the wife that the boss was busy, are you just as liable for that as well? So hello, short order. All right. So she made a complaint and was able to workplace ones work so much better for her as they work on the position of power. She had lesser power and felt uncomfortable, and so she should if this was the case. Correct. I agree. Which is why they've probably done that, which is why they probably put it there. But again, it doesn't really help the case as such, because, well, there's all these other stuff here. Just looking at something, that's all. So, oh yeah, the workplace one's a lot stronger. All right. So now we're going to sexual battery. Okay, sexual battery by Alicia against Robert and Young. See what I mean about mud sticking? I don't know how this is all going to be viewed, because for me, the workplace harassment one is sort of like a slam dunk, in my opinion. So she, it starts off the same way. Young, we're aware of Robert's regular planned sexual exploitations. Of Miss Lee. Miss Lee did not give Miss Lee did not give valid consent to sexual contact. Now we're getting into consent, because it's never been mentioned before, interestingly enough. Consent. So she did not give valid consent to sexual contact with Robert, and only consented under duress and fear of financial reprisals, including but not limited to losing her job. Okay. She was harmed, offended, severely emotionally distressed by Robert's conduct and his own damages to be determined by trial. and it conduct arose and was done in part to further the trafficking scheme. And it was done with malice, fraud, and oppression, making them liable for punitive damages. Yeah, they're just putting that in for good measure by the looks of it. Okay. So now we've got aiding and abetting Alicia Lee against Young. She realleges and incorporates by reference the allegation contained in the preceding paragraphs as fully set forth. Defendant Robert individually and as an agent Odo of RCP committed sexual battery against Miss Leigh. Had knowledge of sexual battery in the form of sexual exploitation committed by Robert by ensuring that no other Shekinah members would be present. Hang on, I've just got it here. I just saw something. There's just something here. Okay. So, talking about sexual battery, and then Young substantially assisted or encouraged the sexual exploitation committed by Robert by ensuring no other Shekinah members were there. So, conduct was a substantial factor. She was harmed. The conduct rose out of at least part further the trafficking scheme. They're doing this big trafficking scheme, and I don't know how I can look at that. Okay, so now we've got Kylie's sexual battery. Let's have a look. See whether I've got the 9th here. Okay. Kylie realleges and incorporates by reference allegations contained in the preceding paragraphs as set forth. Cross-defendant Robert intended to cause and caused a harmful and offensive sexual conduct with Kylie, which Kylie did not consent to when he hip thrust her from behind while at the gym. But wasn't he supposed to be cracking her back? Isn't that what we said? The 19th cause of action. Okay, so this cross-defendant Robert intended to cause and cause, yeah, so because when from hip thrusting, she was offended and hurt, and that should be determined at trial, and it was done with massive malice. Not if he was supposed to be cracking her back. So it's Just looking at this. I'm just looking at the previous document. 12th, 24th, 19th. I'm having a look to see. 24th, 28th. All right. So that is the sexual battery one. So the 20th course of action, battery by Alicia, from Alicia to Hannah. So she realleges, and that, so she said individually of Shekinah physically assaulted Miss Lee. By hitting, pushing, kicking her with the intent to harm or offend. Miss Lee did not consent to being hit, pushed, kicked by Hannah. And she was harmed, offended. Miss Lee was harmed, offended, and severely emotionally distressed by Hannah's conduct, as a reasonable person in Miss Lee's situation would have been. Miss Lee is owed damages in the amount to be determined at trial. Okay. And it was done with malice, fraud, oppression, and making her liable, punitive, etc., etc., etc. Okay. 21st cause of action. Okay. Miss Lee realleges and incorporates by reference allegations contained in the preceding paragraphs. Plus, defendant Hannah individually and as a representative of Shekinah committed battery against Miss Lee. I like driving to the shops at night. No one is there. Or it's raining at the moment. I just don't want to get wet. So, cross-defendant Shirley had actual knowledge of the battery committed by Hannah and intended for the battery to occur. Cross-defendant Shirley substantially assisted or encouraged the battery committed by Hannah by keeping everyone out of the house while Hannah beat and berated Miss Lee. Cross-defendant conduct was a substantial factor in causing Miss Lee harm. Miss Lee was harmed in the amount to be determined at trial, and the actions were done with malice, fraud, and oppression, making her liable for punitive damages. Conversion. Kevin against Shirley. Kevin alleges and incorporates by reference the allegations contained in the preceding paragraphs as though fully set forth therein. Cross-defendant Shirley substantiated interfered with Kevin's personal laptop, which he owned, by knowingly and intentionally preventing Kevin from having access to the laptop beyond what Kevin consented to. Kevin was harmed by Shirley's conduct, and Kevin was harmed, and Shirley's conduct was a substantial factor in causing Kevin's harm. How's that going to work with no witnesses? Interesting. Well, yeah, that's the interesting thing. I mean, how does it work? as I said, there's been a whole lot chucked out. So sorry, I misspoke before. The judgment I've got is from January, and this is the new lot of cross complaint. This is the new lot of complaints because there's been a lot chucked out, a lot that was chucked out. They've had to come up with a new strategy in some cases. So as I said, there's a case on the 12th, so we'll see what happens. So he wants damages in the amount to be determined at trial, and it was done with malice, fraud, and oppression. Yeah, I don't know about a laptop. I don't know how. I mean, I know he lost all his files, but then I lost all my files just recently, and it was I didn't back it up. There's a sort of unwritten rule that if you're going to give your computer over to somebody for repair, you always do a backup of it anyway, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Or is that just me being very paranoid? But I always back up my computer if I'm putting it in for repair. Except I didn't back it up when I went and did my MacBook with my MacBook, because I still have to reload. I completely wiped it. So you just say, much like KJ, there's no witnesses, a convenient way of saying you're what against sales type thing. Were you discussing this? No, we weren't discussing that before. No. But there are, well, and that's why they're saying on information and belief, because they're going, we think that's what's happened, but we're not really sure. So the 23rd cause of action, conversion by Aubrey against Christina and Lamour. Aubrey realleges that Aubrey owns ties that are currently located in Christina and Lamour's current residence, which is Aubrey's previous residence. On information and belief, cross defendants Christina and Lamour Benton have substantially interfered with Aubrey's ties by knowingly and intentionally preventing Aubrey from having access to the ties and effectively refusing to return Aubrey's ties to him after Aubrey sought their return. Christina and Lamour have substantially interfered with Aubrey's access to the ties and effectively refused to return the ties to Aubrey by not responding to Aubrey's multiple attempts to schedule a time for Aubrey to retrieve the ties from Christina and Lamour's residence. Aubrey did not consent to Christine and Lamour's retaining the tiles for longer than it took Aubrey to arrange for transport and storage of the ties. Aubrey was harmed, and Christina and Lamour's conduct was a substantial factor in causing Aubrey's harm. Aubrey's own damages. Cross defendants was done with malice, fraud, and oppression, making them liable for punitive damages. All right. So first question I have with that: how long was it? How long did they have the ties for? Because how long would it be for you to allow someone to have ties, store something in your place before you go, well, they obviously don't want it, so you know, how long do you leave it? Is there a time frame? You know, if it was 6 months later, what would you do? I mean, that's really want to know. Like it says, it took to arrange for the transport and storage of the tyres. Hello, page what? And 7M finally enters the chat. We're at page 55 without a repeater. 55. Page 55. Yes. Page 55 of 101. Was he on the lease? If he was and he moved without taking his stuff, he has a problem. Well, that's the thing. They've said conversion, but they're not saying that conversion to me means that they sold it. Unless they sold it. Conversion is when someone does something with your personal property that is inconsistent with your rights as the owner of the property. So under California law, Conversion is a civil course of action that applies when a person unlawfully and without permission takes or interferes with your personal property. Compensation, and if it's with your possession of your property, compensation for the value of the lost property. So yeah. These people waterboarded and human trafficked, and we're looking at tires. Correct. Did they waterboard the tires? I don't know if they waterboarded the tires. So from my, and I mean, it could just be simple. I mean, the simple solution would be for them just to return the tires, and then he's got his tires. But it doesn't look like he wants that now. He's saying that he's owed damages because he's been harmed. Like, has he been running around with no tires? Has he been did he have to convert his car into the Flintstones car? I don't know. It just, and as your order says, it depends about the lease. If you leave a house after a lease, unless there is some agreement, railing on the rims. Oh, and don't forget, and you've got a laptop as well. So waterboarding, human trafficking, sexual battery, and yes, we've got a computer and we've got tires. It's weird stuff, isn't it? What if Aubrey owed the money and they kept the tires as in lieu of payment? I don't know. I'm just throwing. I mean, they're throwing so much stuff at a wall at the moment, hoping it would stick. I figure I may as well do the same thing too. Okay, so now we've got a breach of contract by Kevin and Aubrey against 7M. So now we are finally at 7M. It's taken us this long to get to 7M. So it's taken us to the 24th cause of action, by the way, 24 causes of action. All right. What Kevin and Aubrey allege and incorporate by references to allegations contained in computer is very generic. A small brand smartphone could be considered a computer. True. That is true as well. Yeah, we don't have a brand. Do you think someone else had a hand in engaging this lawsuit? Oh, it smells of somebody else, you know. Just some of the way that some of the wording and some of the things that the way that some of these allegations are written are very familiar. As if someone either, yeah, you know who. Computer says no, I rest my case. All right, so Kevin and cross-defendant 7M entered into an oral contract under which 7M would take 15% of all Kevin's brand deals. Cross-defendant 7M breached this contract by taking 20% of all of Kevin's brand deals. Aubrey and cross-defendant 7M entered into an oral contract under which 7M would provide Aubrey $6,000 for a song promotion. Cross-defendant breached this contract in not paying Aubrey any of the $6,000 after Aubrey performed. I thought they said earlier that he got paid $1,000 or something. Kevin and Aubrey were harmed, and 7M's breach of contract was substantial, causing harm. Kevin his own damages in an amount to be determined at trial. Aubrey is determined. So we've got one with an oral contract. So we've got two oral contracts. Okay, interestingly, so let's look at verbal agreements in law in California. The larger the transaction or obligation, the more likely it's done in writing. And if you want to make sure your contract is enforceable, you should also speak to a lawyer. But if everything else fails and faced with the situation where all you have is a verbal agreement, they're saying to call them. So oral handshake agreements mean the same. The law contracts in California is quite clear in Section 1622 of the Civil Code with respect to enforceable of verb contracts. The law states that all contracts may be oral unless the law specifically prescribes them to be in writing. A contract authorizing or employing a broker or other person to acquire or sell real estate or to lease real estate for a period of more than 1 year, or to obtain, import, or find a buyer or seller of real estate that in exchange to the surprise oral can be fully applicable in this state in many circumstances. The California Civil Code expressly prohibits certain treaties from being oral, they must be written. But with the exception listed below, an oral treaty can be applied in the state. So, what are they saying? Many types of legal oral contracts are legal and may be applicable in California and other states. However, it is difficult to impose an agreement that was based only on words. One, an agreement which, according to its conditions, must not be concluded within 1 year of its completion. If you are concerned about the application of an existing oral agreement, remember that California courts are inclined to enforce contracts if they feel that one of the parties has used some kind of fraud to get another person to rely on a promise. Nevertheless, a written contract is still recommended, particularly because given the potential costs associated with the efforts to obtain an oral agreement in court. Here is another major exception to oral contractual rules in California. Section 1619 of the state civil code makes a clear distinction between the two types of agreement called express contracts and unspoken contracts. So the two types of contracts are collapsing. Certain types of contracts must be written in order to be legally binding. Contracts for a quantity of goods worth more than $500 must be written in accordance with the law of fraud. California state law may also impose requirements for written contracts for certain type of agreements. As a general rule, you cannot have a legally binding oral agreement on land, a contract that takes more than 1 year, a contract that promises to pay another person's debts, or marriage contract. State law provides such agreements are written in the courts to enforce them. In most cases, most often and most effectively, a neutral witness can be used as a means of providing an oral contract in court. Ideally, this witness can confirm the existence of the agreement in question and may even provide some details on the specific conditions of trade. In this addition to this, eyewitness parties seeking an oral contract before the courts can provide evidence. So, it's essentially going to be, here we go, here's the, a talent agency shall be entitled to recover a fee commission under an oral contract between a talent agency and artist, as long as a particular employment for which such a fee, commission, or compensation is sought to be charged shall have been procured directly through the efforts or services of such talent agency and shall have been confirmed in writing within 72 hours after. Said confirmation may be denied within reasonable time by the other party. However, the fact no written confirmation was ever sent shall not be in itself sufficient to invalidate the oral contract. So that's for artist managers. So they can do an oral contract by the looks of it. Well, whether the tie is worth more than $500. That's interesting. And they're talking about conversion of property. And property is generally, that's written. So, very interesting. And conversion is also what's called an intentional tort. Okay, so so the allegation of conversion is an intentional tort. You actually have to prove it. So it says your neighbour took your bike without asking. The frame is bent. The bike isn't rideable in this condition, and the neighbour refuses to replace it. You file a criminal complaint with the police, but won't get your bike fixed, nor is there a guarantee the cops will do their job. When you want to reclaim the value of your personal property that was damaged, you can file a tort claim for conversion. In personal injury law, this intentional tort is the civil law equivalent of a criminal theft charge. Conversion can occur when someone, acting without your consent, does the following with your property: takes and fails to return your private property, sells your property, substantially changes your property, like cutting down trees. In these types of cases, it's important to note it doesn't matter if the defendant acted as a reasonable person. It does not matter if there's no serious injury. So to prove the tort of conversion, you, the plaintiff, have legal right to the property, that you are the owner of the property. The defendant, wrongdoer, intentionally interfered with your possession of your property. The defendant's actions are the legal cause of your loss, and the defendants converted the property for the defendant's own use. So it's an intentional tort, so you must show that the defendant purposely took your property in a manner that interfered with your interest in the property. It's not necessary to prove that the defendant intended to harm, even though conversion claims are brought as parts of personal injury. It's not necessarily. You may need to show a demand for the return of the property. You may need to show reasonable compensation was made before filing your personal injury lawsuit. And then damages is based on the principle of fairness. If someone takes or otherwise seriously interferes with your use or enjoyment of personal property, you have an entitlement to recover costs directly associated with the loss of the property. So, for example, the bike, beyond repair. You could recover lost wages if your neighbour took your bike without permission and damaged your bike without repair. If the stolen property, for example, an asthma inhaler, was important to your health, you might be able to sue for medical bills and expenses. You may be able to recover non-economic damages. In settings, the court looks at the value of the property at the time of the conversion. So if your neighbour damaged a $1,700 racing bike you bought 5 years ago, the court will set the damages at a fair market value for a used racing bike. This means you may not get the full value, good night, Harrison, of the property. This can be frustrating. Hey, it looks like Rankins, it was upheld, Harrison. And in many states like California, legal remedies at common law have been replaced with statutory law. So state law determines the owner's rights. And there is a statute of limitations between 1 and to 6 years of that. So yes, so conversion. So it's intentional. You have to show that they deliberately did it. So he may need to show all his demands. But if he had to delete everything off his phone, will he have it? Sorry, he need, correct. Yeah, whoever, somebody. I knew you'd know. Okay. Implied breach of covenant of good faith and fair dealing by Kylie against 7M. Okay, so it starts off with re-alleges. She had a valuable, enforceable, and binding employment contract with 7M. The terms of this contract are oral and implied by conduct. 7M was to provide talent management services for Kylie, including representing her, promoting her social media pages, and obtaining negotiating brand deals for Kylie. In return, Kylie was to give 7M 20% cut of those brand deals. On information and belief, 7M either declined, ignored, or otherwise did not pursue jobs for Kylie when brands reached out to 7M asking to work with her. On information and belief, 7M did not try to obtain brand deals for Kylie. When Kylie left 7M, she received significantly more jobs and brand deals than when 7M represented her. That's interesting. Didn't she say that she didn't want to work with certain people? Well, as I said, yeah, interesting, isn't it? None of them have written agreements. Implied in every contract is a covenant of good faith and fair dealing. Cross-defendant 7M materially and substantially breached its implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing by withholding jobs. So hang on a minute. So we've got 2 contract breaches, right? So far, we're contract breaches. How's that cult? How's that a cult? How does this make 7M a cult? Out of interest? Yes, she didn't want to work. Yeah, because that's what that's what she said in her interview. She said she didn't want to work with the people they were wanting her to work with. Implied breach its implied contract of good faith. Withholding jobs from Kylie that she was entitled to under the contract, and by exercising the discretion afforded to it under the contract in an arbitrary or rational manner, and for the illegitimate purpose of controlling and punishing Kylie for not fulfilling and submitting to Shekinah. So now we've suddenly linked the 2 of them. It's the first time. By doing so, cross-defendant 7M did not act fairly and in good faith. As a direct result, cross-defendant 7M's breach, Kylie missed out on work opportunities and her growth as a social media influencer was stunted. Kylie's owed damages to be determined at trial. Cross-defendants' actions were done with malice, fraud, and oppression, making them liable for punitive damages. Well, she didn't she also say in that interview that she was the choreographer for some of them, and that even though she didn't work, and there was issues with her weight as well, which she said she got highly offended with because they told her she needed to keep her weight down. I'm not saying that's right, but from my understanding, to be at the top of your game, you have to be watching your weight. All right, intentional interference with contractual relations. By David against Matthew and RCP. David realleges and incorporates the allegations in the preceding paragraphs. That's right, she didn't get the gig and she was not happy. We haven't had she wanted all the gigs, but they were going to the better dancers at the time. I mean, I sort of got the impression listening to her interview, she didn't want to do all the work the others were doing to get the gig. And that's from her own words, from her own interview. That's not, I've only seen that one interview with her, and I got that was the impression that I got. David had a services contract with cross-defendant Matthew's client that Matthew was aware of. On the information believed, Matthew, acting individually and as a representative of Shekinah, intended and caused the client to breach the contract between client and David because David received a text message on the 17th of December 2022 from the client stating she would be continuing the job with Matthew instead. Well, that Peter, that's my guess. That's what I'm thinking. Because why else? Well, I mean, that's what happens. See, I put my name forward for a lot of stuff for extras work, but often they want a certain type of person. If you don't fit what they're looking for, they can't use you. It's nothing, there's nothing sinister in that. That's just what they want. So what was this one? I also wonder, yeah, it's once Melanie doesn't seem to have same as for dancer compared to Marianne. Oh, you, I know you can get it's easy to get them mixed up. It really is. I know. All right. So, on information belief, yeah. So David was harmed, and Matthew's conduct was a substantial factor causing David's harm. David his own damages. Well, here's the issue that I have with this one. Remember, David left, right? We have said of course we're making the big thing that he breached his lease. Okay, so even after he left, he still wanted to do work. I'm not saying that they were right, but how can you say that about intentional interference with contract relations when he'd walked away from it, but he was still expecting to get all their work? Does that make sense? Like if you leave some place, you know, usually you don't get you just can't go back and get the work or be priority to get the work. Anyway, waiting time penalties, Labour Code by Alicia against Robert and RCP. So she alleges that sections 201 and 202 of the Labour Code require employers. Was he working to pay back money he owed? Maybe he wasn't supposed to get paid. Well, see, again, that's another lot of questions. Because we worked out that we sort of said last night that he still had, but there was still 6 months owing on the lease, and they may, because he breached, they left, they may have not got their deposit back because of the fact that they breached their lease, and he had this while he was with 7M or while he was with Shekinah, this job. So when he left Shekinah, was he entitled to get the work from Matthew Shin? All these little questions, hey? So requiring employers to promptly pay all wages owing to an employee at the conclusion of employment. Miss Lee no longer works for the cross defendants. She quit in June 2022. Doesn't say for the third time. She is informed and believes, and based thereon alleges, the cross defendants' failure to pay her upon her employment ending was willful. Robert acted on behalf of RCP as its owner and its CEO and violated Labour Code 226 or otherwise caused Labour Code 226 to be violated. As such, Robert may be held liable under the employer under Labour Code 558. As indicated, Robert made all final decisions for Shekinah and related businesses. Anything that affected Miss Lee's work would have been decided by Robert. Miss Lee is no longer working for the cross defendants and is entitled to penalties against cross defendants in the amounts determined at trial. All right, so David is also saying that he is owed money. So not only is he saying that he's owed money, David against Shekinah. Hey, they put it in twice. Oh no, Kevin against what's this? Oh, Kevin against Shekinah. Okay. So David, so everyone has the same paragraph. David was employee of Shekinah. Shekinah provided David with jobs and told David how much to charge for the work. When he was working for Shekinah Properties, he'd show up, be told what to do. He was not afforded initiative or control. Well, I know a lot of the handymen that do come to my rental property, they have to look at it. They have to ring up and ask permission if they could do the job with the agent or get approval before they can actually start the job, all of that sort of stuff. So, I don't know. Sections 201 and 202 Labour Code requires employers to promptly pay all wages owing to an employee at the conclusion of employment. So far, all I hear is the words of Emily Baker. Lawsuit motions are Emily D. Baker. All lawsuit motions are allegations and shade. Correct. She has done that and tripped up before realizing what she said. So I wonder if she's shouting about John Chrisley James Westwood. She mouths. She does. All right. David no longer works for the cross-defendant. He believes that cross-defendant's failure to pay him was willful. Wasn't he supposed to charge? So if he was supposed to charge per hour, and that was, who was that against? Was he an employee or was he a contractor? Because I'm a bit confused now. Because here he said intentional interference with contractual relations. And then he's saying that they didn't pay him on time. I thought he charged. He had to charge an hourly rate, which meant he was contracted. All right. So she kind of had complete control of this is Kevin. Huh? I thought Kevin was high-tech glass. Yeah, well, that seems to be what we're finding. Kevin against Shekinah. Did Kevin? Who's Kevin? That's not concrete, is it? Because he never worked for 7M. I never worked for Shekinah. Didn't he work for 7M? Shekinah had complete control of the work Kevin did and had people working for Shekinah doing the same thing Kevin was doing. Kevin was not engaged in independent trade in the same nature of work was performed. About paying property wages. He no longer works for the cross-defendant. He quit working for Shekinah in July 2022. Kevin is informed and believes that based on and therefore alleges cross-defendant's failure to pay him, Kevin is no longer working for the cross-defendant. Okay. Who's Kevin? That's not concrete, is it? Because I thought his issues were with 7M, not Shekinah. Where does he fit on the pie chart? Then we've got the same. So Marilyn's also now going after 7M. So she in July 2021. Hey Kev, you got some pay slips. It's July 2021. Marilyn was directed to perform craft services for 7M for a video shoot. That was the company was doing the video shoot, and the services needed to conduct it were part of 7M's regular business. Marilyn was not independently engaged in this profession. She performed the work as directed by Shirley. She worked for 7M when she was instructed to do so by Shirley. All of Marilyn's work ended after July 2021. So it was about the pay, and she no longer works there. Blah, blah, blah. So that's for a month's work. Okay, 31st cause of action. So they're making the same, essentially they're all making the same. They're all making the same claims. So failure to provide accurate itemized wage statements, labor code. David against Shekinah, he was employee of Shekinah. Hang on a minute. I thought he was working for math. I thought he was. I don't know, short order. I thought David was paid by the agent Alpha Realty because he was doing work for the church. David was an employee of Shekinah. Shekinah provided David with jobs and told David how much to charge for the work he performed. Well, that's not an employee. When David was working on Shekinah properties, he would show up, be told what to do, was not afforded initiative or control. That's what happens when you have a boss. Sections 226A of the Labour Code requires cross defendants to itemise in wage statements all deductions made from wages earned by David and to accurately report total hours worked and wages earned. Cross defendants have knowingly and intentionally failed to comply with Labour Code on each and every wage statement that should have been provided to David. By failing to keep adequate records, cross defendants have injured David, making it confusing, difficult. You're confused! And difficult to calculate the unpaid wages earned and the expenditure not indemnified by cross defendants in wages, interest, penalties. So again, it's another business wage claim or a labour issue or an employment issue, not a cult issue. Just saying. David was never provided any wage statements and therefore deemed to suffer injuries for purposes of Labour Code. He seeks to recover the statutory penalties provided by the Labour Code. 33rd cause of action is Kevin against Shekinah. Shekinah had complete control of the work Kevin did. Most bosses do. Had other people working for Shekinah doing the same thing Kevin was doing. Yeah, happens at work. And Kevin was not engaged in independent trade in the same nature of work was not engaged in independent trade in the same nature of the work that was performed. What's the point? And then it's the same thing there. He worked for Shekinah from November 2021. He worked for Shekinah on November 10 to 19, 2021, on January 15 to 23, 2022, and in March 2022 was never provided any wage statements. So what was he doing? Who was he working for in those other times? That's funny. All right, now we've got Kevin against 7M. Failure to provide accurate itemised wage statements by Aubrey, Kaylee, and Kevin against 7M. Aubrey, Kaylee, and Kevin re-alleged, so Aubrey was the employee of 7M. As he did not have control over jobs, he was told what to do or how much he would charge for his work. The work Aubrey did for 7M was what the business did normally. Aubrey was always paid in cheques made out to him personally. Kevin was an employee of 7M, as 7M paid out every month, and his paychecks went through 7M instead of Kevin directly. 7M had complete control over the work he performed for 7M, including locations, song choice, wardrobe, collaborations within the group. The work Kevin did for 7M was what the business did normally. All of the work Kevin did while employed by 7M went through 7M. Kaylee was an employee of 7M, as 7M had complete control over her work, including what she did. I can see the point they're trying to make. They're trying to ascertain, to show the difference between an employee and an independent contractor. When she filmed what settings she was to use, how the work would be distributed. The work Kaylee did was usual for 7M's course of business. Kaylee regularly filmed with talent and filmed exclusively for 7M during her months working for them. Kevin worked for 7M from April 2021 to July 2022. He did not receive wage statements from 7M from April 2021 through to December 2021. The wage statements he did receive were deficient because they did not state the total number of hours worked, the last 4 digits of his social security number, or any employee identification number, nor the hourly rates in effect as required by law. The name and address of the employer were also not provided or were incorrect. The statements also showed surprise deductions like filming costs that Kevin had not agreed to and contained incorrect management fees of 20%. Kevin had agreed to a management fee of 15%. I'm just having a look here. just seeing if. So I've got here right here is the general rules and regulations for artists managers, which is from the California Code of Regulations, Title 8, Chapter 6, Division of Labour Standards Enforcement, Subchapter 3, Employment Agencies. General rules and regulations for artist managers. I would assume that they would be coming under artist managers because they were representing artists. And it spells out how it's all supposed to be done here. So I don't believe they were. So this is fees for license. I'm wondering whether they had all of this to do, if this is how they. So it says copy of contract. So Title 8, Section. So here is the other interesting thing. If they come under a management, these regulations, but no, these are, I don't know, it comes under Division of Labour Standards Enforcement. Well, that says employment agencies. So they've put artist managers under employment agencies. So this is the Division of Labour Standards. So this is what they're talking about. There's the general minimum. So this is what they're supposed to use. So prohibited employment of minors in entertainment industry, child performance, tribal labour laws. It would depend where. So meals and lodging. What they're allowed to charge for meals and lodging, I guess. Now, if we go back to, so what page are we on to? On page, we're at the 31st cause of action. I want to go all the way to the end. Oh, look, we're nearly there. Let's go back to here. Because Alicia had this. And she was saying, they're saying, so the deductions are there, the salary. So they're saying there's no hours. But could she have been paid just a flat rate? Because it seems like it's the same every week, irrespective of hours that she's done. Does that make sense? So that's the 31st of the 8th. Oh, hang on. 1st of the 8th, 2015. Trying to work out how these work. Is this the same thing? Have they given the same statements? Because that rate's higher. So they've got the deductions there. They don't have that. So it doesn't have any breakdown. So three single. Now it says here that she's single. Is it meaning state CA 3, single or married, 2 incomes? Yep, you in heaps, you're going to pay the same amount a week. Correct. So it says 2 incomes. So is this acknowledging that she was married at the time? Or am I reading this payslip wrong? 3 single. Remember, she was supposed to have gotten married at one point in time when she came out. Anyway. Oh. No, no, I'm going to go to so we've done that one. Oh, we've done that one. We've done that one. No, no, we've got to go back here. Yeah, we're back here, aren't we? Right. 20, yeah. So, well, that's right. Because remember, in her statement up the top, it said that she was married. Swap screens? What do you mean swap screens? Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, didn't you see what I just did? Okay, I need to go back. Sorry. All right. All right. So, sorry. It says here, federal 3 single, state CA 3 single or married, 2 incomes. So, I goes, what do you mean swap screens? What do you mean? I couldn't work out what you were talking about because it was just. So I don't know whether she was she married or not. So very interesting. So I'm not sure how this reads, but here it says, I'll see if I can zoom in for you. You can see that now? Now, according to this, her hire date was the 1st of the 9th in 2015. So 2019 federal 3 single, state CA 3 dash single or married 2 incomes. I don't know what that means. And put it in the return for the claim. Yeah, yes. So is she getting a double income? I'm just trying to work out what this all means. And whether she's married or single, because I don't know. And she did say it somewhere. Okay, is determined. Okay, what does withholding mean here? Okay, so let's have a look. Understanding your paycheck. Social Security is it on a. Okay. It's interesting because I'm looking at other examples of withholding tax, for example, and none of them have hours worked here or rate or hours. They've just got the federal, the Social Security, the Medicare, the state tax, and the California state disability insurance. So they've got state income tax and state disability insurance. So there you go. I mean, ours has what holidays we've got owing to us, for those of us that do that. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so anyway, that's what we're looking at the moment. Okay. RCP. We're nearly done. Fortunately, we're nearly done. We're nearly there, I think. We've just got a whole lot of, labor. For me, it looks like, from my opinion, is that it's mainly all. I've still got a little bit more. It's mainly employment service, like it's all to do with employment. That's what I'm seeing. Did you keep Lee, or at any stage use her marriage name? Well, it's interesting because when you look at her on Instagram, her name is Alicia Priscilla Lee, and she spells it two ways. She spells it if you look at her Instagram here, let's look at her Instagram. I can't find anything to say that she was married other than what was in that statement. So we've got here, she's got Priscilla Lee, Alicia Priscilla Lee, and it's spelled different ways. Priscilla, Lee, and Priscilla Lee, Leigh. Now, there was one of these that was very interesting that I was watching.
Do you have any hobbies? I don't know if I have any hobbies right now, but I like to work out a lot. I like to go hiking, and I prefer to have ice cold coffee in my hands when I'm hiking. So I think my current hobbies, or the things that I consider fun right now, is working out. I really like to work out. I wish I could do more.
Was it this one?
What do you think happened to Reno? He's completely off the grid and taken out of the public eye. I don't know what happened to Reno. I can only assume based on what I know about Shekinah and how they operate. In 2022, when the live from the Wilkins happened, Robert assigned certain people to go on social media and speak and send a message to the public. And Reno was not one of them at that time. So based off of that, I believe that Robert did not want to use Reno as a voice for him. And maybe the pressure caused Shekinah and 7M to tell Reno to close out his account, because I don't believe he would have done that on his own. That's just not how Shekinah operates, unless they changed. So please speak up and ask questions.
So that's Priscilla Lee. This is Alicia. She's one of the ones suing. Oh, yeah, this one.
Since the documentary Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult was released on Netflix. And I wanted to give a warm thank you to some people that I got to know throughout the process and made it possible for me to be part of this project.
Well, that is the $69 million, because they seem to be confusing it.
Eric Doneen, producer Jessica Acevedo, executive producer Jasper Tomlinson, and executive producer Martin Desmond Rowe. Thank you so much for your support, your help, your patience, your understanding, your empathy. Thank you so much for making it easier. It wasn't easy, but easier for me to do this. I also want to thank everybody at Dirty Robber. I do not know most of the people that were part of the project, but thank you so much. And thank you for Netflix for doing this, for seeing the vision. And to everyone that was part of this project, thank you so much. It has been over a month.
Okay, and then we've got...
Were you ever able to have your own romantic relationships within the church? Not with church members. If you wanted to rebel, you could date somebody outside of the church. But that was usually short-lived. Were most marriages kind of arranged? Yes. When did you first realize that you had not been thinking for yourself? 2 years ago when I left, I was still heavily influenced by the teaching. So it took me a while to wake up. And I think it took me about a couple months, maybe a month to 2 months, for me to realize that I was conned the whole time.
Hear that?
So I had to find a way to think for myself. And that was very, very, very difficult.
Yes, I did ask what happened to... I want to know what happened to her husband. So did you notice she said wasn't till... So she came out in 2022, around the time they were preparing for the documentary. And it was around that time that she discovered that she was conned. pawned or trafficked. Well, that, again, she didn't say any of that. She was very, very... Anyway, we'll see if I get a response. So Kevin worked for, yes, so Kevin worked. So Kaylee received deficient wage statements from 7M from September 2021 through to June 2022. They were deficient because they did not state gross wages earned, the last 4 digits of a social security number, an employee identification number, net wages, nor the hourly rates in effect as required by law. I can't speak on that because I can't tell you that. The name and address of the employer were also incorrect. The total number of hours worked was also incorrect. It only listed in a screenshot was brand deals, not videos of 7M's talent taken for 7M for their pages. They weren't brand deals, nor did it include editing time. The statement did list the applicable month, but not the exact dates of the pay period. Section 22(6)(a) of the Labour Code requires cost defendants to itemise in wage statements or deductions made from earnings earned by Aubrey, Kaylee, Kevin to accurately report hours worked and wages earned. Very convenient. Will, I know, I saw that and I thought that is very, very suspect. Actually, let's watch that again because I want to just fully grasp that again. Let's just watch it again.
Were you ever able to have your own romantic relationships within the church? Not with church members.
So you couldn't. So you can't have romantic relationships with church members, and you can't have romantic relationships with people outside. So then, who could you have romantic relationships with?
If you wanted to rebel, you could date somebody outside of the church. But that was usually short-lived. Were most marriages kind of arranged? Yes. When did you first realize that you had not been thinking for yourself? 2 years ago when I left, I was still heavily influenced by the teaching. So it took me a while to wake up. And I think it took me about a couple months, maybe a month to 2 months, for me to realize that I was conned the whole time. So I had to find a way to think for myself. And that was very, very, very difficult.
Someone's put it here. Hope you don't mind me asking. It's been documented that you got married during a 4-year period you were away from Robert Shinn, etc. Then suddenly you got back in touch with Robert and he told you to leave your husband. When you said it only took you a month or 2 to start thinking for yourself after you stopped seeing them all, I wonder why you'd turn around after 4 years and leave your husband and a life you'd made behind. 4 years is a long time to experience independence, decision-making, and comparing what you left to what you gained after leaving. Your sister said you were in financial trouble and Robert helped you, and that's why you went back. We've always wondered what happened to your husband and why he just accepted all that. Also, many of us have asked about your other sister and where she is and what her story was. Hope that's okay. Yes, so there you go. It's documented. So he told her to leave her husband. So she left her husband. Whoever that is. Interesting. So, yes, so she was out for a few months. So they said they started work on this around 2022. So she was coming out at the time they were putting the production together. I find it very interesting that she's now saying that she took her a while to work out that she'd been conned. Okay. So So they said, by failing to keep adequate records, cross defendants who've injured Aubrey, Kaylee, and Kevin and made it confusing to calculate unpaid wages earned and expenditures not indemnified by cross defendants that's owed. They were never provided any wage statements and therefore deemed to suffer. Well, how did they get that? How did their tax statements get done then? Because I'm certain that their wage statements would have been needed for tax deductions. I mean, the great thing now in Australia is that our employers upload directly to the tax office. So when I go and do my tax return, which I will be sitting to do probably over the weekend, I just have to click a button and that all imports in there because the employers have done it. So I don't know. I must say I don't usually check my pay slip that much. I only checked my first pay after July 1 because I wanted to see whether the how much the award wage had gone up, because the wages had gone up. So because I'm paid on award wage, I wanted to see how much more I got. So now we've got violation of labour code by Alicia against Robert and RCP. Yeah, you just got your mic up. Isn't that great though? That you just don't have to now chase up or wait for your stuff to happen. It all just uploads for you. I love it. So yeah. With everything that's wrong with Australia, there are some good things about Australia. Although I'm going to have to try and I did. So this is Miss Lee performed work for Robert and RCP and was paid less than the. I'm just trying to get this to fit on the page. I can't do it anymore. I don't know how I make this smaller again. I could be really tech savvy and I could be really dumb, and I'm just having a dumb moment now. I'm having a dumb moment now. Oh. I do things when I don't want to do. Oh, there we go. I don't know how I do that. I've now hit 2 hours. We're probably going to have to make it into a part, whatever it is, tomorrow. We'll finish it. We'll look at the judgment, hopefully, tomorrow. And as I said, the 12th is the next judgment. So the judgment that we're going to look at is the one in January, because they had to rewrite it. This is the rewritten one. Yeah, you met Brendan O'Connor last night. You functioned. You had a bit to drink, you said. Part 100. Well, this is, but you know what? It seems like it's been going for so long. I can't remember who. The thing is, I can't remember who's supposed to work for who now, and who said what and where. It's just everything. It's just like a big blobbed mess at the moment. And here's the thing: why didn't if, for example, Alicia or Priscilla, or whoever she's calling herself, was told by Robert that if she wanted to come back to Shekinah, she had to leave her husband, wouldn't that have been a really important point to state, particularly when you're trying to say that you've been coerced? Wouldn't that be very, very important to state I was coerced? And he took advantage of me and told me I had to leave my marriage. Why has that part been left out of that whole thing? So she was paid less than the minimum wage by RCP for at least some of the hours worked. From August of 2022 to February 2021, they stopped paying Miss Lee and paid her nothing for the mortgage, loan processing and real estate services she was providing. Miss Lee was still expected to work 10-hour days, 6 days a week during this time, and did so. But I thought she was working for the real estate. Oh, I'm confused. I don't know who's working for who, when, where, why, what. Cross defendants' conduct arose out and was done at least in part to further the trafficking scheme. They're going on with this trafficking. They're really, she's owed damages. Violation of Labour Code by David against Shekinah and Studio on the Mount. Be interesting to know why she really left her husband. Well, that's right. That would be the perfect information for KJ. She'd love all that. Well, she was apparently broke and was in money trouble. And Robert agreed to help her, but she never said that he would only agree to help her if she divorced her husband. And that, in my opinion, makes a huge difference. And it looks like Robert paid for her to do the mortgage breaking. Who told her she was being conned, I wonder? Well, that, in my opinion, speaks volumes about someone's involvement in that. This is interesting. I don't know. So I just actually Googled her and I've just found her real estate license. It's got her address on it. I don't really want to show that. But it says she's a broker, but I think this is the bit that's going to be interesting. So it says her main office. She's trading as Lee Investments from the 6th of the 7th, 2022. Rain Mortgage from the 6th of the 7th to the 2022 to the 20th of the 12th, 2023. She's got a license with all these places. This one's expired. This is Alpha Plus Realty that expired. I think so. David worked unloading and unloading. I loaded my car with 500 water bottles, 200 yo-yos and lanyard today for next exposure today. Apparently so. That's Alpha Plus Realty. That was cancelled from the 25th to the 2nd, 2011. And then 2013. RCP Financial. License expired the 5th of the 4th, 2024. Alicia Mara, that was the one that she said that she made that she was forced to cancel. There's another one. So she was issued a broker's license on the 22nd of the 7th, 2029. Sorry, 2009, 2029. We're not there yet. 2009. So doesn't look like she's working for herself. Affiliated law licensed corporations. So there you go. And it says that she's licensed. So there you go. Interesting. And her license expires on the 21st of the 7th, 2025. How is all of that? Labour trafficking case. So anyway, this is also her. It looks like this is her corporation. It was issued on the 26th of 3rd, 2024. Designated officer, that's her. So it looks like she's still having issues with she still could be. I mean, I don't want to I can't look. It just says does. It doesn't say. It doesn't give me anything other than the fact that they're does. A deer, a theme. I always love it when it's all does, because it could be anyone. So if we look at this one, this is RPC Financial, and they've got their license. So their license date is the 4th of the 4th, 2028. They were issued their license on the 5th of the 4th, 2012. That was interesting. And these are all the ones that they've done. And a salesperson, Hannah Grace Shin. There's her license there. So these are all the trading names, and she's got hers here too, her expiration date. So hers is expired. There we go, Alicia. So there you go. So there's that one. And so that was Alpha Plus Royalty. This one. Expired. Yeah. So she's got an investment company. And a financial company. Isn't that the mailing address of 7M? You want to know what's funny? I just put that yeah, so that's, hang on. So I'll go back into my box. I've just had a massive brain fade there because I'm going, isn't that the yeah, this is it. Oh, I didn't realize that mailing address is actually yeah. Anyway, it's on the license. I can't do much about it. I think they've, well, that's right. Who are all these other invisible people? So now it's saying David, violation of labour. He performed construction work for Shekinah and was paid less of the minimum wage. In fact, David was not paid. I thought he was told to pay $100 an hour for the work he did. Through March 2020, around August 2022, he worked for a studio on the Mount loading and unloading equipment in around 2021 and was not paid for these services. He's owed damages. Kevin against Shekinah. He performed music and choreography work for Shekinah and was paid less than the minimum wage by Shekinah. Well, here's the interesting thing. If he did that as part of a church service, should that really be paid? He created 2 original songs, mixed the other hit songs together, choreographed each for Shekinah's short film The Circuit. He performed this work on November 10 to 19, 2021, from January 15 to 23, 2022. Kevin also provided construction services for Shekinah in March 2022, which was not paid. His owed damages. The violation of labour code stuff could be deemed work for the church and therefore not liable to be paid. So, violation of labour code, Maryland against 7M and Studio on the Mount. You see why the more we look into this, the more we think that a certain somebody has had something to do with it, because it contradicts itself, correct? It says he was paid less than the minimum of wage. In fact, Kevin was not paid at all for these services. And was paid less than the minimum wage by Shekinah. In fact, he was not paid at all. All right, and she provided craft services for 7M in July 2021 and was paid less than minimum wage by 7M. In fact, she was not paid at all. She performed craft services for Studio on the Mount on 2 separate occasions and was not paid at all for these services. 40th cause of action, quantum merit. It means what one has earned. It means something along the lines of reasonable value of service. It's like another word of saying unjust enrichment. Really? There is no contract between Kevin and Shekinah that covers this dispute. Kevin performed in good faith music and choreography services for actually, wait on. Huh? Kevin performed this work. The music were provided at Shekinah's behest, and Shekinah knowingly and voluntarily accepted and benefited from the music and choreography services. Shekinah was aware and knew that Kevin was not providing the services gratuitously. Shekinah knew that Kevin reasonably expected to be paid for the services provided. Shekinah failed to pay him for the reasonable value of his services. He's entitled to reasonable value of his services plus interest costs, expenses. As a result, Shekinah's failure to pay Kevin, blah, 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 and then Aubrey from 7M. We're still going. I'm just about done. I think tomorrow will be the last night that we will tack this on. And then the longer this is going, the more confusing I'm getting. The more confused. Aubrey alleges, in alternative to his breach of contract claim, that he's entitled to recover in quantum merit if it is determined that either a valid or enforceable contract does not exist. The existing contract does not cover the subject matter of the dispute between Aubrey and 7M. Aubrey performed services that were outside or over and above those contemplated by the existing contract, or the existing contract is void, invalid, or unenforceable. Again, they're going, if you deem the contract not valid and enforceable, here's our next claim. But if he went over and above or outside his contract without renegotiating a new contract, whose fault's that? In April 2022, Aubrey performed in good faith a song promotion for the benefit of 7M, pursuant to an explicit request for such services by 7M. The song promotion was provided at 7M's behest, and 7M knowingly and voluntarily accepted it. They knew that he was not providing the services gratuitously. They knew that he expected to be paid for the services provided, and 7M agreed upon a price to perform. They failed to pay. He's entitled to reasonable value of his services, plus interest, costs, and expenses to be determined of trial. So now we're going to unjust enrichment. So this is, should the court find that Miss Lee was not an employee of RCP or that there was not an express contract for compensation, Miss Lee pleads in the alternative that RCP, Robert, and Hannah received services from Miss Lee. She was not providing on a voluntary basis. Oh, my mind just went to the, my mind didn't go to bookkeeping. No, didn't he say that he was told to delete his phone, everything on his phone? That was part of his statement, wasn't it? That he doesn't have any of those texts. He's got nothing. They all deleted their phones. RCP and Robert enriched themselves at the expense of Miss Lee through the knowing and intentional procure of forced labour, non-payment for that labour, and payment of less than minimum wage for that labour. As the individual who handled all the bookkeeping and payroll for RCP, Hannah was aware of and intended this enrichment to occur, and thus conspired with RCP and Robert to enrich RCP and Robert at Miss Lee's expense. Cross-defendants' conduct arose out of what was done, at least in part, to further the trafficking scheme. So they're really pushing this trafficking scheme for Priscilla. Miss Lee alleges and incorporates by Robert and RCP enriched themselves at Miss Lee's expense in not paying Miss Lee's salary for 6 months and collecting Miss Lee's unemployment at that time. Cross-defendants' conduct arose out of, and it was done in part to further the trafficking scheme. She was subjected to. Should the court find they showed payslips? How can they not find she worked for them? Well, there are payslips, as we said. There are payslips. We've seen the payslips. But here's the question. Does it constitute below minimum wage? That's the question. She's saying that she was not paid for all the work that she did, and she was saying that she was paid below minimum wage. So my question is, what do these payslips show? Do they show? And then, so this is Exhibit D, which says that she does have that workplace harassment claim. As we've said all along, the Alicia Lee. Oh yeah, Mr. Shin would show up and announce when Miss Lee. This is where this is really interesting, right? This is in her civil. This is in her case, her complaint for harassment, right? This is where it gets really interesting because it says after Miss Lee returned to work for RCP and Robert, the sexual harassment resumed again in the spring of 2020. Mr. Shin would show up unannounced to where Miss Lee was working, get naked on her bed and order her to have sex with him. How many people have a bed in their workplace? This happened again once a week until Miss Lee left her job again in May 2022. No, Priscilla was a real estate agent. And we all know that when you're doing real estate agents, I mean, it doesn't look like it was a commission either. So it looks like it was just a flat salary. Let me read that again. After Miss Lee returned to work for RCP and Robert, the sexual action. In the spring of 2020, Mr. Shin would show up unannounced where Miss Lee was working, get naked on her bed, and order her to have sex with him. So my question is, who has beds for them? Who has beds in their offices? Or am I in the wrong job? Okay, so 45th cause of action, unjust enrichment. It is believed he subjected her to this because she was a woman. That's what she's saying. that's why she's doing gender, what was it, gender something. Yes, because she was a woman. But here's my other question. Why has none of the other women complained of it? None of the other women have said that they had to have sex with him. She's the only one. I mean, you've got Kylie's claim that he hip thrusted her, but like none of the other women in this lawsuit have actually said anything about being forced to have sex with him. I actually wouldn't say it was because she was I would say it was more to do with the fact that she was a Korean woman myself. I'd find that more plausible than the fact that she was just a woman. Because if she was just a woman, he could have been sleeping with them all. But she was a Korean woman. Don't tell me there's going to be like a Fourth Amendment. So that's just my thought. It'd be more likely that because she was a Korean woman, not the fact that she was a woman. Okay. So this is Unjust Enrichment by Alicia Lee against Shekinah, Robert, Abraham, Christina, and Hannah. Robert, Abraham, Christina, and Hannah individually and as the representatives of Shekinah Church enriched themselves at the expense of Miss Lee through the knowing and intentional use of pre-signed checks from Miss Lee's bank account. Miss Lee's provision of pre-signed checks was not a true gift, but a product of intentional manipulation and coercion. Cross-defendants' conduct arose out of and was done at least in part to further the trafficking scheme she was a part of. They're going hard with the trafficking, aren't they? Okay. Unjust Enrichment by Alicia, Marilyn, David against Shirley, Robert, Shekinah. If you're going to do this from a HR perspective, you found her vulnerable, she was scared, etc., not just you were a woman. Well, and don't forget, Peter, she was also broke. And he was going to come and save her. She talked about the fact that she had money troubles and financial troubles, and he was going to help her get out of those financial troubles. So he came in as a savior for her. As I said earlier, I think the workplace harassment is the strongest claim. Is the one that's is the one easiest to stick. Some of the others, I would say, are fanciful at best, because there's no guarantee that you're going to get there's no guarantee that you're going to get any of this. So, well, there's the other side of it. She used him for financial advantage, correct? So, correct. She went back to him because he was going to help her financially. So now we've got she used him for financial advantage. But see, the thing is, Peter, because she was a Korean woman, she probably spoke Korean. He probably spoke Korean. So they had this bond. So I hadn't thought of that other perspective. Yes, that's a very interesting perspective now. WOACB versus WOACB has gone on the offensive just recently. I'm just about to finish up because I'm getting confused by all of that. Because again, the story has kept changing. I can't keep up. She has decided to, she's listed herself as an archival consultant, document I'll be posting, quoting Katie Joy and the many questionable things she said or written in the past, in particular about her son. Because she just felt it was the right thing to do. There's a picture there of his face, and I'm not going to do that. There's that one. Some things just shouldn't be shared on the internet. This one, she calls him a narcissist. Oh, I'll scroll up. It's got his face there. I think it's blurred out. One is a narcissist. He watches videos of himself while he eats. There's two there. Then she's got this one. She's such a peach, she called her, and then she's highlighted stuff here. If he did take advantage of her being vulnerable, he's a creep and should go down. But don't make it into more to make it seem salacious. Well, that's yes, and I think that's why they're throwing lots of different things at the wall, trying to make it stick. This one says she sounds a bit munchy. But she obviously felt she was going to benefit by going back, getting her money problems sorted. And she's in a bit of a bind now because she can't go back. More from the archive. She deleted these posts back in 2022. So if she gets into trouble again, for example, she's not going to have him bail her out because they're currently in court together. So it's going to be interesting, but I'd love to know what happened to the husband. And if it is true that she had to divorce him, that's really what I want to know, is whether she had to divorce the husband and how that happened. Oh, it does. Oh, no, is that her? Oh. No, that's not her. What is the odd saying? Nutrition will set you free? Yes, stick to facts. I agree. But also, don't forget, Katie Joy is, not sticking to the facts either, if I might say so myself. And we know she just did that video where she talked about how they couldn't, no, she wasn't until she was out for a couple of months did she finally get free. And that's bizarre. So this is Melanie Lee. And let me just get this up. So this is the sister. Now she's not in
job like an ordinary job, like paying minimum wage. I think I was an assistant to a real estate broker, and then I got a small apartment. I lived paycheck to paycheck. I mean, I had very minimal expenses. I went and got a car. It's like someone who comes out of prison and they have nothing and they have to start over. It's like the same feeling. And you just work your way up. You learn how to make new friends. You learn how to have normal conversations. I did a lot of observing how people talked and social cues and reading a lot of books. And eventually, when I was able to afford it, I started doing therapy. I started just getting into self-help programs. But most importantly, I wasn't embarrassed to tell people about my story, because once you shared it, people offered so much support and love, and it enabled me to ask questions that were like kind of like duh, you know, and so they wouldn't judge me if I asked questions that were like so obvious, you know, like if I was reading a menu and I didn't know what burrata cheese was, then I could be like, what's burrata cheese, and not be judged if I was having a meal with someone that knew my past. The most important thing is like what
I don't know what burrata cheese is. Interesting that she's got Stop Colting in there. Kylie Douglas is in there. Melanie Wilkins commented.
once you leave, like not try to hide your past, but like be proud of it that you've overcome it and starting over, and you'll be surprised of how much support you receive. How did you start over? Did you stay with your friend that helped you escape? So brave. I got a job.
Okay, so they've got a lot here. Aubrey's one of the kindest souls I've ever met. We bonded over sharing our stories. And what I also find very interesting is both of them have actually come onto Instagram around the time. Hello T King, how are you? Around the time the doco was coming out. Counting down until the days. Look. By sharing my story with the Wilkins, I've been able to shed some light on Robert Shin and his evil tactics. We're so grateful we've created this. So, another question. Why didn't he go after Melanie? Why did he just go after Priscilla? She said, thought I'd join a party and release a statement. And she spells her name L-E-E, and her sister spells her name L-E-I-G-H.
Mel told me what was going on. And it was like, no, this is what, we gotta get out. And how soon can you get out of there?
Yeah. Marquis showed up with a van and the bat.
I didn't know what I was gonna do with the bat, but I knew I would use it.
A lot of you guys have been asking me about my friend with the bat that helped me escape. His name is Marquis, and yes, we're still very good friends. We've been friends since high school. We've stayed in touch. You know, I got my own apartment after, and we lived in the same neighborhood. And it's so nice to see that people are recognizing him and people are appreciating what he did, because I definitely do. And in real life, we just have like the best time.
She got out first, didn't she? Didn't she get out first, and then Priscilla got out, I think. But yeah, anyway, it's definitely crazy. So I think one more night of this crazy lawsuit. Has anyone made any sense of it yet? Has anyone really worked out what well, it sort of does. And in some ways they're saying it sort of has. I mean, Kylie's thing to say she's more successful now than what she was in the lawsuit's a bit pretentious. But see, Melanie's not in this lawsuit. So my plan is to come on live. Look, I've been nearly on. I think I've been on nearly every night since I've been on school holidays. I think that's a really good week I've been on, isn't it? So anyway, I'm going to leave it for now. I think that's it. I think I need to go and have some sleep now because I think I need to have a bit of a snoozy. I will let you know how we go. Anyway, hopefully we'll finish this off tomorrow. We'll try and make some sense of it. And then we just wait till the 12th to see whether they're successful with their motion to compel. They obviously want some stuff that Shinns not handing over. I can't really, speak on what that, what any of that is, or because I don't really know, but it's just something a bit, So anyway, I will catch you again next time, and probably tomorrow, and I will see you again. I'm just saying the same thing again, different ways, aren't I? I've lost the plot. All right, I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.